Hi, this is Zahour from SM JUROR, and today we're going to be looking at the juror misconduct issues in the case of People versus Santana, which is out of New York. Some points that I want to highlight that we're going to discuss are YouTube videos and their potential for juror misconduct, the effect of the digital age on jurors, and we're going to take a look at a juror's demeanor. Now, in this case, in 2014, there was a YouTube video in an unrelated matter showing a person named Brownie Lopez punching another man and causing his death. Now, in this case, the defendants Esteban Santana and Lopez were both charged with attempted robbery in the first degree. Lopez was also charged with attempting to punch the victim in the head. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor and was sentenced, while Santana was tried and convicted of a felony. After the trial, two jurors admitted that they had seen the unrelated 2014 YouTube video of Lopez before their deliberations. So, defendant Santana filed a motion to set aside the verdict, claiming juror misconduct and exposure to extraneous evidence through YouTube, and a hearing was held. Two jurors recalled seeing the YouTube video prior to trial. During jury selection, neither made the connection of Brownie Lopez to the man in the video. At some point during the trial, the YouTube video was shared among at least three jurors. After seeing an arrest photo of Lopez, at least two jurors wondered if he was the man in the YouTube video. That photo was flipped over during deliberations so that the jury could concentrate on the evidence against Santana. None of the jurors testified that the YouTube video influenced their decision, but one testified that it didn't help. Okay, now, as a general rule, a jury verdict may not be impeached by probes into the jury's deliberative process. However, a showing of improper influence provides a necessary and narrow exception to this general proposition. So let's look at the exception. Policy considerations underlying the general rule against impeachment of a jury's verdict must be balanced against the defendant's fundamental right to trial by a fair and impartial jury. In that context, evidence of an outside influence on the jury is held to constitute an exception to the general rule. So, what is improper influence? It includes well-intentioned jury conduct, which tends to put the jury in possession of evidence not introduced at trial. Now, New York has a particular statute, Criminal Procedure Law, CPL, Section 330.30, and that provides that a court may set aside a verdict prior to sentencing if there occurred improper conduct by a juror or another person in relation to a juror, which may have affected a substantial right of the defendant and which was not known to the defendant prior to the rendition of the verdict. Now, the burden of proof under that statute is on the defendant. In assessing misconduct, the particular facts must be examined to determine the nature of the material placed before the jury and the likelihood of prejudice would be engendered. Now, this case had a really great synopsis with respect to the proliferation of YouTube videos. So I wanted to provide the language of the court here. It says, YouTube is a free and popular video sharing service with millions of users. Together with the proliferation of cell phone cameras, YouTube has enabled live footage of criminal activity to be a part of a community's everyday experience. Video now accompanies traditional print media in their online editions and is reproduced on television websites and through streaming services. It is to be expected that this phenomenon will continue and increase. In the 21st century, there is no way to guarantee that jurors will avoid all contact with outside information related to a case. The question is whether that contact likely tainted the jurors' perception and affected their verdict. Now, the court looked at various factors to determine the possible outside influence of the YouTube video. And so when they were questioning the jurors, they sort of assessed their testimony relative to these factors. The first was whether the jurors' testimony was consistent. Next, whether their views appeared to be colored by the outside information. Then, how relevant and compelling the outside information was to the central question of guilt. Next, whether the overall evidence of guilt was otherwise substantial. And finally, were there clues to answer these questions in the testimony concerning the deliberations process? Now, the court talked about how a juror's disregard of outside baggage in the digital age is necessary. So it said that if jurors can never cast aside any outside baggage they bring to deliberations, be it a prejudice, a preconceived notion, or exposure to media coverage, the jury system is destined to fail. In the digital age, all these questions will arise with greater frequency. And then the court noted that even a routine Google search for directions to a courthouse can call up information on cases to be heard on that day in court. The subject heading is visible, and the reader has seen information about a case completely without intention. So then it looked at the test to determine the effect of juror misconduct in the digital age. The trial court's analysis of juror misconduct in the digital age must therefore remain a careful two-part test. Not just whether the juror came into contact with outside information about the case, but also whether the information likely influenced any juror's verdict. And it noted that not every misstep by a juror rises to the level of misconduct, warranting the setting aside of the verdict. Now, relative to the holding, the court said that if there was any prejudice created through the introduction of information about Brownie Lopez, the jurors were able to put it aside successfully. While the jurors may not realize what affects their verdict, in this case, they made a very conscious and deliberate choice to counter any bias occasioned by the video or just knowing that Brownie Lopez had a criminal past. And that was, they referred to the fact that they even turned over the photo of Lopez during deliberations so that they can concentrate on the allegations against Santana. The defense has not met their burden under CPL Section 330 of demonstrating that a substantial right of the defendant may have been affected by improper jury conduct. The deliberations were not tainted, and the verdict will stand. So they said that there was no error in the trial court when the trial court denied the motion to set aside the verdict. Now let's look at some specific facts which were pivotal to the outcome of the case. The real issue is whether the jurors who saw the video and others who may have heard about it adequately discounted it during deliberations. So that is the issue. Can they discount it? So none of the jurors said that the video or outside information about Brownie Lopez influenced his or her verdict in any way. And what's important here is to ask the specific question when you're trying to raise this juror misconduct issue. Don't forget to ask the question on whether or not it influenced their verdict. Second, the video concerned an absent co-defendant's conduct in another matter that was prosecuted. The information did not bear directly on the facts of the present case of the defendant's innocence or guilt of the charged crimes. So essentially, the YouTube video was irrelevant. Even though the video was about the co-defendant in this case, Brownie Lopez, that co-defendant actually was not tried in the case because he pled guilty to a misdemeanor. Next, the jury knew Lopez's previous actions were not central to the issue of defendant Santana's guilt, of which there was ample evidence. So remember that you're always going to be looking at the amount of evidence which supports the conviction. Also, Remember again that the jury made that conscious effort to turn over or flip over the photo of Lopez so that they could concentrate on the issues against Santana. And then finally, one of the jurors testified that the YouTube video didn't help. But the court said that that comment was viewed as part of the juror's snarky demeanor and not given much credibility by the trial court. The appellate court found that comment to be more of a flip one-liner to the defense attorney rather than a reflection of true bias affecting his verdict. So essentially, the appellate court agreed with the trial court that juror's comment was snarky, so to speak. So remember that the appellate court cannot substitute its judgment for that of the trial court. And that's it for our case law analysis of the juror misconduct issues in this case. Again, this is Nilgün Zahour from SM Juror. Thanks for watching. Because the only evidence you want the jury to consider is in the courtroom. See you next time.